411 Live.
Where you can learn about issues that affect us every day. State of world, 411 Live.
Real people, real talk.
Made to help people in our community in every way. For your girl, 411 Live.
For every 100 fatal shootings in Wisconsin, 72 are deaths by suicide. This includes young people, our seniors. Here's another disturbing statistic. One of the leading causes of death in Wisconsin for the ages of 10 through 34 is suicide. 10 years old? Hello, everyone. I'm Beverly Taylor, and this is the 411 Live. Real people, real talk. Today, we will be talking about the sociological aspects of suicide. Now, if you're thinking, suicide, that doesn't pertain to me, or I don't know anyone who would even consider that, then this is the podcast for you. My guest today is Simmone Kilgore, who is kind of a regular, but it's been a while since you've been here. So Simmone is a counselor and founder of Transcendent Hope, and I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Talking about sociological aspects of suicide. Now, this is a very important topic for me because I have had a very close family member who went through a bout with serious depression, had thoughts of death, and came through it.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's one of those people that you wouldn't think that this would happen to. So that's why I say, if you have the idea in your head that I don't know anyone who would ever go through something like this, then this really is the podcast for you.
It is the podcast for you and me and everyone.
Everyone, absolutely. So with that in mind, how do sociological factors, like for my loved one, isolation, social isolation. So how those sociological factors like that contribute to suicidal risk?
Yeah, well, they impact greatly, greatly. And I think we don't understand the impact, specifically if you're not the one feeling the weight of those specific factors. And we understand that these aspects have everything to do with the degree to which a person feels those factors, whether it's isolation or loss of a loved one, loss of job, the way they feel in the world, and the way that the society kind of normalizes or values them. You know, if I don't feel connected in a certain way to an organization, a person, a place, an identity. And so when I feel lost, those factors play in part a big role to how those suicidal thoughts can start entering a person's mind, because it kind of makes you feel devalued. If I don't fit in this circle, if my family doesn't understand, if I'm always left alone and nobody's checking on me, what's the point in me being here? And so it is extremely common for humans to consider the idea of not being here anymore and what that would be like. Would it provide relief for me? Would it provide that? Would I stop that cycle of kind of, intrusive thoughts is what we call them in the field of psychology, that they kind of keep intruding as you see people living their lives. What is going on with mine? So in transition, specifically with our seniors, if I've raised a family, if I've worked 30, 40 years, if I've been a part of an organization, a specific faith-based organization or community org, and now I feel as if my voice is not being valued, I'm being pushed out of the way. My children are grown, my partner may be deceased or whatever happened in that situation. Who now do I belong to? Where's my value? Why do I feel like my voice is not necessary or needed anymore? It is very hard in those types of transitions. Isolation being one of the heaviest
Yeah. You know, I was reading up on this, trying to prepare for talking to you. And I read that there were 4 types of suicide.
Yeah.
And how do you pronounce that?
I'll mess it up as well, Beverly.
Egoistic.
Egoistic.
Suicide.
Yes.
And
yes.
is that kind of what you were talking about, that,
Yes.
that absence of that social integration?
Yeah, absence. And you think about the bustling, busy lives, or just the hustle and bustle of trying to make it happen every day, to being reduced to, you're not needed in this area, even if it's a job loss. And I left a career that was fulfilling for me in some capacity, or people relied on me.
Right.
People said, "Good morning, Simmone," every day, or whatever it is. And when that kind of gets cut, you kind of don't know what to do. You have to figure out how to reinvent all the time.
Right.
What's next for me? Where do I go next? What do I do? How can I be valuable? And how can it look different in a way that it satisfies my spirit and my soul, and I feel valued by others?
Right. But because there are a lot of people who tie their self-worth with their job.
Absolutely.
You know, their occupation.
Job, socioeconomic status, if I'm married or single, weight, everything, these things, these constructs cause us to believe that we're either valued or invalued.
Yeah.
The way society has set up, how should we look? How should we behave? How should we present? What is that title behind my name? So it's interesting because I'm working with folks all the time, and I provide some services to a group of young people in the community. And one young person identified the other week that they had fought to do things differently than what they learned at home from parents and siblings and extended family, and had really fought to get their degree and get this career started. And the person cried and said, "But I feel so lonely and isolated. I wanted to bring my family into the fold with me, but now all they do is kind of push me away." So here I have worked my whole life to be different than, to build up this life where I thought if I looked good in terms of title and money, which I like to say sometimes we look good on paper, but we feel icky on the inside.
Right.
And there's a lot of people who live that duality of lifestyle. Best to enter into counseling. Best to enter into counseling.
Absolutely.
So that we can talk about reality versus idealism.
That's good. That's good. Okay. Another suicide type, altruistic suicide. And that is what, you'll be better off without me?
Yeah. That idea that I'm a burden to others. Again, an example of a young person I know that was shot and now is unable to walk, is paralyzed, and is thinking to family and friends, "I don't want you to keep taking care of me. I don't want to live out the rest of my life not being able to utilize my legs. It's just best to let me go." From a young person to a senior, to somebody who has experienced so much trauma in their life that they feel like, what's the point? But a lot of folks feel like at times when suicidal ideation and these intrusive thoughts hit, if I'm gone, who would even know or care?
Yeah.
They don't value me. I don't feel seen and heard. One of the things about the Therapeutic Alliance and relationship is my role is to see you. And a lot of therapists think the role is to fix. But full presence and the ability to see and hear, you're doing so much just in that training and that ability to make somebody feel valued.
Absolutely. People want to be seen and they want to be heard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And sometimes you don't get that from your family of origin. You got to search for places that do value you and careers that do value you and circles of support that value you. And then how do I provide my own self-value? Where's my image of self coming from?
Right.
Is it from what my mom and dad said? Is it from a higher power? Is it from this title? How do I value myself first?
Yeah, that self-assessment is important.
It's super important.
You know, when we talked earlier, and you were, and I was asking you about you kind of the trends, the changes, what really kind of bothers you, or, well, you mentioned hopelessness,
Yeah.
and that was what you were seeing.
Hence, transcendent hope.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yes.
Is that part of that name? Yeah.
Yeah, big time. Big
So,
time.
and this hopelessness from the very young to the very old, that's what you're saying?
Depression can seep in regardless of age, which is what you mentioned about a 10-year-old. We know there's a lot of research that identifies kids that are bullied early in school, very early on in life, and then might not have a home environment where they feel supported or heard, or maybe an adult has not intervened enough, or maybe they have. And the pressures from the bullying is overwhelming to the mind of a child that doesn't get picked for recess or dodgeball or science lab partner. To feel like I'm not like the other kids, to feel like I'm left out, to feel like I'm teased, kids can get extremely overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And there's many examples. One in particular I can think of, a young black boy who was 11, who was so tired of being bullied that he died by suicide.
Oh, wow.
That was his only way of thinking that I can get some relief
Yes.
from this kind of pressure,
Yeah.
with no way to see myself out of this. And of course, we're talking about a developing mind that doesn't always know where to seek and doesn't know and shouldn't have to either.
You know, that makes me think of, you know, I'm in the whole mediation realm, and it makes me think of that Maslow's hierarchy, you know, the
of
basic needs. Yeah.
Very important.
Right. And one, belonging.
Belonging is huge, Beverly.
Yeah.
Why do you think we join organizations and sororities and fraternities, and even if it's a swim class at the Y and you kicking it with some people you don't even know? Hey, girl, I'm glad you're here again on Wednesday. We come every Wednesday because that's what we do. Knitting courses and classes and cooking classes and partnership,
Yeah, that's important.
relation,
Yep.
how we relate and how we emote and how we exchange emotion between myself and other people is very important
Yeah. Yeah.
to the psyche and well-being.
Anomic suicide, that's another type. Stems from that sudden and unexpected change in situations. You're
Yes,
talking about
ma'am.
financial loss,
Yes.
somebody dies.
COVID.
That was huge, right?
Yep, huge.
And we're still dealing with that.
We are still dealing with the after effects of COVID. We also talked a little bit about survivors' guilt or survivors of 9/11 as an example when we spoke the other day, because there were many not many, I don't know the research and I don't have the data, but I can get it to you, that several firefighters had to create some kind of alliance and therapeutic support networks for them in particular, because they were the survivors of 9/11, where they may have lost many people that were in their specific fire squads, things like that. So to experience that as they did in New York, the lives that they feel they could not save, the families that they heard scream out in terror,
Yes.
thinking about a child no longer having their parent. And so me as a firefighter, I've taken upon myself to say, I want to help save people. That type of catastrophic loss, and specifically something that just came out of nowhere for many of us, right?
Right.
I was going to say something else political, but I'm going to be quiet. But for most Americans, we didn't know it was coming. And so that idea of there's no control, Beverly, loss of control, loss of sense of who I am in this role. I no longer feel valued. I let people die, which you didn't, but you feel that. So several of the firefighters after 9/11 and the efforts to kind of repair some of that work through suicidal ideation, and others have died by suicide.
Right. Right. That survivor's guilt
Survivor's
is
guilt.
strong, isn't it? Okay.
And these sudden, again, going back to COVID or the loss of a loved one,
Yeah.
the loss of a child suddenly, that type of despair is a deep, dark hole. And isolation is not it's not something that's recommended.
Absolutely
We
not.
need to ensure that we are very, very close to our loved ones in things like sudden crisis.
Yeah, that connection is
Yeah,
huge.
it's huge.
It's huge. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back and we will talk a little bit more about the sociological aspects of suicide. My guest, Simmone Kilgore. Stay with us. You're listening to the 411 Live.
Some people judge a book by its cover, and if you're not what people are looking for, you're kind of like a reject.
School, it feels like everyone's staring at me and I'm just kind of not really a person.
It just feels hard today. Nobody was listening to me.
Try to understand me more, and I'll try to do the same.
Listening is a form of love. Find ways to support your kids at soundedouttogether.org.
I don't know why you're so sad. You've got a roof over your head.
You gotta stop with that depression stuff. You all right?
It just feels like it's coming from everywhere.
Do you want to talk about it?
You can talk to me if you're feeling sad.
Whenever you need to talk, I'm here, okay?
Welcome back to the 411 Live. Real people, real talk. My guest is Simmone Kilgore. We're talking about the sociological aspects of suicide. I was, naming 4 types of suicide, and I'm at number 4, and that being fatalistic suicide.
Yes.
Those high expectations, right?
Yeah, high expectations and this sense of almost a false sense. I want to be careful of what is expected of you. You know, what you need to be providing for other, or almost a grandiose idea of who you are and how you show up in the world.
Yes.
And if I've let people down, have I let you down in that way?
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So I want to talk about, you talk about the sociological aspects of suicide. You think of the family dynamic. I remember when I was young. Now, I'm an older woman now, but when I was really young, there would be a suicide, and you would hear somebody say, well, Black people don't kill themselves.
Yeah.
It's like people had their heads in the sand because it was happening.
It was happening.
People they didn't want to talk
They didn't
about
want
it.
to talk about it.
But it was happening.
It was happening. It is happening. And it's happening even more. It's on the rise. It's on the increase. We know statistically that men generally die by suicide more than women. And there's research to back up, some of the pressures that men feel, specifically at times Black men, with the confusion of how they are expected to show up in the world, right?
Right.
Am I comparing myself to a white man, to an Asian man? Am I comparing myself to the Black woman? Are there pressures in relationships? Have I fulfilled this goal of what everybody ever thinks machismo is? Or what does it mean to be a Black man in the world? And then to be ignored oftentimes by systems and mistreated, regardless of socioeconomic status. You are viewed and targeted often. And that is still very true.
Yeah.
No matter, many of us are successful and doing great things, wonderful, but at times when that type of danger presents itself or societal view presents itself, it doesn't know if you're accomplishing great things.
Right.
It's harming.
Yeah.
And it can be overwhelming for Black men and their mental well-being. Which is why I love that there's many new conversations about Black men and wellness.
That is wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Let me ask you this, too. I say a father died by suicide, and then years later, the son dies by suicide. Genetic?
Yeah. And so we talk about it when we think about the term depression or major depressive disorder in the DSM-5, which is the clinical book that psychologists and therapists use to kind of identify if somebody is diagnosable with something based on these specific factors. And so when we think about our heritage or our genetics, a lot of it you can trace back to ancestors or past family members who also suffered from the same disorders. Like my mother also suffered with high blood pressure or diabetes or migraines or heavy periods. I mean, you can trace a lot of this. When you go to the doctor and they say, can you tell me a little bit about your family history? The reason that your primary healthcare provider is asking is because it's a factor in how they associate and identify what may be going on with you, what may be a factor in your life. So there's environmental factors, where we live, how we feel, is there isolation, the communities in which we live, are they food deserts, is it poverty-stricken, is it a lot of crime, environmental. But there's also the other piece of science that is biological, which is the same for physical well-being as it is for mental well-being. And so I think so many of us don't understand that we are one body, one mind, one soul. You most likely cannot have a diagnosis, a mental health diagnosis that doesn't affect you physically, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So a diagnosis of breast cancer often causes depression, and many women or people that are diagnosed with breast cancer often are offered an antidepressant along with the diagnosis because it is common. It affects your mental well-being.
Yeah.
And so I think we don't take that into account enough. But if you think about how primary healthcare providers ask that question, I, as a therapist, when I first work with people, I say things like, tell me more about your family. Do you know a little bit about your grandparents? What about your mom and dad's siblings? Tell me a little bit more about them. We can trace it with alcoholism. We have to be able to trace the same thing with suicide ideation.
Yeah, yeah.
Same thing.
We need to talk too.
We have to talk. We
so
have to
people
tell our stories.
Tell our story.
We have to tell our stories.
I remember when I was a little girl and I had an aunt, and they would say, I would hear the grown folks talking, and they would say, she's having a spell.
Yeah.
You know, that was a mental thing that she was going through.
Yeah.
But I remember that term, a spell.
Any way for us to kind of water down the effects of what somebody else is going through because we don't quite understand it. And so I think we get uncomfortable with not understanding stuff.
Yeah.
And so I've tried to live my life in a way that I say, I don't understand it. Maybe I can ask Beverly more about it.
Right.
Tell me about how you feel. Tell me what you know, or tell me what to expect or look for. How can I be available to you during these times, whether I understand it or not?
Yeah.
And so oftentimes women were diagnosed with having spells. There's a lot of research on housewives of the 50s that would go to a clinical therapist, white coat, 4 walls, still room, and talk about how they were unhappy and what they felt at home. And the doctor's advice at that time in the 50s was, ensure that you do what's best for your husband and kids. You'll be a happier wife.
Wow.
If you get dinner on the stove at a certain time on the table, and if you greet your husband when he comes in, you'll feel fulfilled. Minus what her hopes and dreams were. So when you learn about people like Amelia Earhart or Sojourner Truth, people who fought the good fight and understood that their responsibility was to themselves and others, they had a passion for something within themselves that they didn't let die. My role in the world is not to just be a servant to others, but how do I serve myself?
That's
and when
good.
you have that in line,
got to be a balance.
Balance, and you live a fuller life.
Okay, we're getting close to the end, and I want to make sure I get a couple of things in.
Okay.
When you see somebody struggling, that whole thing, you know, there's this. I think it's a myth where you say, "Well, I'm not going to ask them if they're thinking about suicide because that might, if they're not, that might, cause it."
And that is a wrong way of thinking. Let me say that again. That is a wrong way of thinking. If you believe that somebody is sad, depressed, been depressed for a long period of time, diminishing their interest, no longer wants to go fishing or to church or to their social clubs or around people for the holidays, if there's like sudden weight loss or gain, or if there's so much insomnia, you see that they're kind of spiraling. It is okay to check in and say, how are you doing? I'm a little worried about you. I love you enough to have this conversation. Any thoughts coming up for you that make you feel unsafe? Any thoughts coming up for you that make you feel like you're not valued, like you're not loved, like there's no hope?
Yeah.
There's always space for hope.
Can you go to the point of saying, have you had thoughts of suicide?
Absolutely. Have you had thoughts of suicide? And more than likely, you'll hear people say, yeah. Sometimes they've had these thoughts of suicide, which sound like nobody cares about me anyway. Or if I'm not here, then it won't matter.
Right.
And so they may not have the term suicide in their head, but that's a way to shape that conversation and say, that sounds like suicidal ideation.
Right.
You can have information that says, this, see what I'm talking about? This is where this comes from.
Right. The person that I was talking about, that close relative, question was that. Her response was, I've had thoughts of death.
Yes.
That's how she put it.
Yeah.
And so it was, okay.
Yeah.
Will you be open to talk to someone?
Will you be open to talk to a healthcare provider, a professional that works in this field?
And she said yes.
Awesome.
And I said, can I start researching and find you someone?
Absolutely.
Where to go?
Yeah.
She wanted a Christian counselor.
Yeah.
I went through the whole thing. She's in another state, found somebody down there.
Yeah.
She went.
Yeah.
So that asked the question, as you were talking about, how are you feeling? Are you what thoughts are you having? The next step is that they say yes.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Let's go and get them to a provider that can provide that type of specific assessment.
Yes.
You know, do you have a plan?
Yeah.
If you planned to die by suicide, what would that look like for you? You know, and then if there's a higher level of need, do you need medication? Do I need to refer you to a psychiatrist? Is it somebody that we can call, social supports, that can come in and check in with you on a daily? How can we measure the progress from the first month through the third month and on? And that's something that therapists provide, that kind of assessment.
Right.
Where are we at now? But let me explain to you one thing, Beverly. You said, I got right on it. But what you did first is you saw her.
Yeah.
You saw her. You paid attention. You saw her when you called and said, Ma, what is this? And I'm right here.
Yeah.
You validated her. Oh, somebody does care and wants me around here.
Well, girl, you're going to make me cry.
I'm sorry. I do that sometimes. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But that's the most, I don't want people to forget, all listeners, the most important thing you can do is show somebody that you're here and show up. What happens next? You know, we can talk about that on and on and on. How do we have the conversation? How do we ask the questions? Right? That's important. But what's most important is that they are seen.
Yeah. You had mentioned something, safety, suicide, assessment, 5-step evaluation.
There's a 5-step evaluation that we generally use in therapy practices and organizations throughout the community. But one of the things I want folks to understand is there's all kind of resources to help you. Specifically, if somebody is feeling overwhelmed or having a lot of suicidal ideation happening, there's a number that you call 988. It's the new crisis hotline, text line, website where you can get the support you need right away. Generally, suicide assessment, there's a 5-step evaluation that we use where we kind of identify the things you said about your mom, which is identify risk factors. Like, what is happening? What is causing this kind of risk? Is it her age? Is it isolation? Is it that she's in another state? Is it a health scare? It could be many things. Protective factors, what are those? What we talked about the other day, which is the resilience piece we talked about, that is built into all of us. What keeps us here? What keeps us going? Is it your grandkids? Is it your committee that you run? You teach Bible study every Wednesday night, and it might be 3 people, but they count on you, right? What is the resilience piece? Your faith, your things that keep you going. Do you love nature? What is it, right? Number 3 would be conduct a suicide inquiry. If you have suicidal thoughts and plans and behaviors, what can we do to kind of offset that for you? Many people say, I think about it, but I don't have a plan. Great.
Yeah.
If you have a plan, we go to another step where we determine the risk level and the type of intervention that is needed. Is it inpatient? Is it outpatient? Is it sessions with a therapist once a month? Is it every week? Is it phone calls? Is it text? Is it the chat line? Is it Beverly? What is it, right? And then 5, of course, we would need to document from a therapeutic lens so that we can see the case from a distance when we review it. I come back in with your mom and the 6 weeks that has passed, and I say, okay, this is where we were. In the documentation it shows, tell me how you feel now.
Yeah.
So we have an understanding for the cycle.
Yeah.
And if this thing comes up in mom again, we can pull out this documentation and say, look how far you've come. Let me show you what worked last time. Let's see if this works again. If not, let's change it up. I'm right here with you.
Excellent. Excellent. Transcendent Hope.
Yes.
Are you accepting new clients?
I would love to, but at this time, I am just fully loaded. And that's often the problem or the issue with providers of color. There are 4% of providers of color in the nation, and many providers of color are just full.
Right.
Their calendars are full, whether it is things like this, providing resources to the community, or psychoeducation, trying to have our own balance, whether you have family or just living your best life too, and then having a full practice load. It could be very overwhelming, but at the same time, I am a part of the Black Clinicians Network here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where there are over 165 providers of mental health services, whether it is educational psychology in our school systems or medical systems throughout the community, or people who have their own private
How
practice.
can people connect?
Black Clinicians Milwaukee, all written out, .com. You can find a list of therapists there to provide services. They can identify their names, their agencies, phone numbers, and websites if necessary.
Excellent. Simmone Kilgore, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you for joining us. Listen, if you have thoughts of harming yourself or of suicide, go to the hotline 988, where you can talk to somebody, get some support. This is very, very important. Thank you for listening to us at the 411 Live. We're a nonprofit organization. Go to our website if you'd like to help us. We appreciate it. Until next time, I'm Beverly Taylor. Again, this is the 411 Live. Real people, real talk. If you would like to check out past episodes, there are many ways. Go to your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Like and watch us on Facebook. Watch and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you have suggestions for future episodes, go to our website, the411live.org. Thank you.